This is Philip Keevil again, coming to you from First Presbyterian Church in Reading, Pennsylvania. We are that congregation that meets in the big church building that is right opposite the library on 5th Street in downtown Reading. And I've been talking to you over these last few weeks of the sermon series that I've been preaching from the Gospel of Luke. This actually will be the last in this series, and it falls on Palm Sunday. Now, whatever your relationship to the church is, you probably know what Palm Sunday stands for. In case you don't, then I'll remind you that it's the day that Jesus rode into the city of Jerusalem on the back of a donkey to great acclaim. People, especially children, were all excited, and people were throwing their clothes on the ground for the donkey to go over, and people had already put their clothes in the back of the donkey for Jesus to sit on, and so on. It was an incredible event. And they were singing praises to Jesus that for the Pharisees, who were Jesus' main critics, and people that weren't very happy with him at all, very religious people they were, they found the praise that was sung most inappropriate. This week, I am linking that event, and I'm going to be handling it in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 21. I'm linking that event with the conversation Jesus had in the Gospel of Luke, as I said earlier, the last sermon in this series, where his critics, following the event of the triumphal entry, try and trip him up by asking him if it is appropriate for Jews to pay taxes to Caesar. Now, it was an obvious trick question, and it was one of those questions to which there's no good answer. If he said no, Rome would be on his case. If he said yes, then the critics of Rome, of which there were many, would be very unhappy with him. What Jesus did, as we shall see on Sunday, is call for a denarius, a coin. He asked what was the inscription on this coin, and of course it was the face of Caesar. In other words, these people who were trying to trip Jesus up here were using coinage that bore the face of Caesar. Well, he says, and this is the key to the passage, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. It's a very important statement, and we deal with it in relation to the connection that we have as Christians to the culture around us, focusing in particular on the part of the statement that says that we are to render to God what is God's. What is God's? Of course, the answer is everything is God's. But what does it mean to render to God what is God's? What about your public life? On Friday, you will have rendered to Caesar by paying your taxes. But what do you owe God? That's the question we're going to ask. And we're going to explore it in different realms and different aspects. One of the points that we will be making is the degree to which Christians are affected by the culture around them, much more so than they would admit in some cases. Render to Caesar, Jesus says, all that belongs to Caesar, and render to God all that belongs to God. One other thing, the aspect that I want to emphasize here with respect to the triumphal entry into the city is Jesus as King. And one of the points I will make is that Matthew, all through his gospel, links together Jesus as Saviour and Jesus as King. The kingship of Christ is really the theme here. And the point is that if Jesus is your Saviour, he is also your King. And if he is not your King, he is not your Saviour either. That is what it means to render to God what is God's. It means to recognize the kingly claims of Christ, the kingly claims of Christ upon your life. We don't have a king in America, thank God, and I mean that literally. Nevertheless, we do have a king, and his name is Jesus. He is king over every realm of our existence, and we are to live life in this world, rendering to Caesar all that is Caesar's, and to God all that is God's. Well, I hope to see you there this Sunday as we celebrate together the triumphant entry of the King, not only into Jerusalem, but into our lives and into our hearts. God bless you, and have a great rest of the week.